I'm going to build one additional ice tree that is not simulated. The current ice tree I'm working with is found in the simulation region. I don't actually need the simulation region to create the additional leaves. So what I'm going to do is create a second point cloud. Again, create an empty point cloud. I'm going to call this my instance point cloud. And if I open up an ice tree, I'll create a regular ice tree. And I will plug in a emit particles compound. So if I look under emitters, I've got the emit from surface, or I can even use the emit in place variation that I built. Plug that into port 1. I'll use the maple as my emitter. And if I move to frame 2, I should see some particles emitted. I might have to increase the number of particles to 1,000, and I'll switch the type to sphere and increase the sizes so we can at least see some particles and where they might be growing on the tree. Now in this particular shot, it's actually a close-up, as you can see here. So I don't actually need particles where my camera is not going to sit. So to make this actually work, I'll use a WeightMap to filter out my particles. So I'll just paint a simple WeightMap on the maple main object. Get a WeightMap. And I'll call this the leaf filter. I'll hit W to paint. I'll just expand my paintbrush and make sure I have a opacity of 100%. I'm using Control W to access that. And perhaps I'll grow leaves on some of the branches. I'll just kind of choose randomly where I want leaves to appear. Say there. Okay, I think that'll work. Open up the ice tree, and I'll use a filter by WeightMap. So let's look up the WeightMap tools. There we go. I'll execute on emit to initialize at birth. Of course, I return an error in the emit compound because I have to actually point to the WeightMap. So there's the leaf filter, and I'll actually use the weights that I've painted to control the particle emission. So we're restricted to the area that I want. I could even add in a few more here. Just adapt this on the fly. And I want to use an instance node to instance my leaf. So I'll actually just kind of minimize this here a little bit more. And if I open up my Explorer, let's look for our instance leaf. I'm going to actually pull that into an object view. View, General, Object View. And in order for the particle instance to sit correctly, I'm going to want to make sure that the center pivot of this leaf is at the base. So I'll use the center tool. I'll just move the center pivot to the base of the leaf and return to object mode. I can freeze the center pivot at this point and close the object view down. If I press F3, I still have that instance leaf selected, so I'll bring it into the graph. Of course, when I'm pointing to the instance leaf itself, I can always pick it too, so I don't really need to get it as data. But I'll use an instance shape. So this is probably the most efficient way of instancing. Instancing with any kind of animation, displacement animation in time, can really slow down ICE's refreshing and the ability of your scene to render in any sort of reasonable time frame. So the instance shape is very light and will literally just take any object pointer. So if I double click on it, I can even just kind of jump in and pick the object by hand. So if I do that, open up the Explorer, I'll pick the instance leaf, so that's being used. If it's a hierarchy, I would use object and children. In my case, I'm using object only, and I don't need to pick from an index. It's a single leaf. I might want a bit more variety, so I could add some variation to the leaf itself. I'll plug that into the shape port. Just move back to frame 2 here. And then I'll work with the size of the leaf. So I'll increase the size of some of these guys here, and I'll use a few nodes now to add some randomness to the leaf orientation.